Many of the financial resolutions people make this year will fail.
Many people's New Year resolutions are no more than New Year's confessions. I confess I got to lose the weight. I confess I want to spend more time with family. I confess I got to get better with my finances.
If you want to accomplish something in the new year, set a goal, then make your resolutions. If you set resolutions without a goal, you can resolve to fail.
Think of it like the game of football. If you're the coach and you send your kicker out on the field for a field goal attempt, do you want him to have a resolution to kick the ball as hard as he can? Or do you want him to have a goal of putting the football through the goalpost?
I want a kicker with a goal to make a goal 100% of the time. Once you have the goal, then you can have the resolutions. In the case of our kicker who wants to score a goal, he can have a resolution to line up and get his footwork just right. He can have a resolution to kick the ball hard. He can have a resolution to make an adjustment for the wind. All of those resolutions put together then help to achieve his goal.
Resolutions are kind of statements of intentions, where goals are statements of commitment. Resolutions just, they can change. And I've got an example of this. I've got some papers here. And a paper clip is kind of like a resolution. I could say, hey, I want these papers to stay together, and I paperclip them together. Or I could say, well, maybe I don't like that order, so I'm going to switch it up a bit, and then I can, put it together. But at any time, I can take it back apart. I could even get rid of one of these things altogether. But if I'm really committed, then I get these papers all grouped together, and I take a stapler, and I make my commitment.
Now you're committed.
Now, I'm not moving these around.
What if you do need to move something around? Can you still do it?
It's harder because, I've got them stapled. If I really need to adjust something along the way in my goal, then I have to spend some time undoing this staple, take it out, look and see where the adjustment needs to be made, and then I clip it back together if I still have that goal.
So you have to be very intentional about changing something.
Absolutely. Where a resolution, I can just easily take it off and move it around as I wish or as I don't wish, because many resolutions don't last very long.
That's right. The law of averages is that a resolution lasts less than a week, 23% of the time. Most people fail in their resolutions within the first month, and less than 80% of them ever fulfill those resolutions within a year.
So would it be less than 20%
less than,
of them?
less than 20%.
So less than 20.
Yes.
So more than 80% fail
More than 80%
by the time you
fail.
get through a year. Wow.
So what's causing these problems? We have to look at some human factors. One could be discipline. Are we disciplined to follow through with what we said we want to do?
A lot of people have wishes, and wishes are a lot different than desires. Desire is something that really compels you to change, to do something different, and to change what you've been doing takes determination. It also takes discipline. The story about Sir Hillary Clinton just wandering around.
Not Sir Hillary Clinton, Sir Hillary...
Edmund Hillary?
Edmund Hillary. There we go.
Running around at the bottom of Mount Everest, and one day he decides to climb it. That didn't happen that way. He had to have a commitment. He had to plan. He had to have lots of short-term goals as well as long-term goals. And I think that is why resolutions often fail. They're not built up with any commitment. It's just like you said, Michelle. It's just, this would be a nice thing to happen. It's a nice emotional feeling. Might be good for Lent because you can get through the first week, but it doesn't happen for a changing life.
So the difference between goals versus dreams that are out there versus confessions usually involve giving up something negative and yet not really a commitment to it. Dreams can be something you really want to achieve that is in a positive direction, and yet they often lack commitment as well. So what makes a goal different from both of those things?
I think a goal is something that you have really thought through and gained a lot of knowledge about. You've educated yourself about it. You've become enlightened about what things could be like in the future. You have a belief that, it could be better if I accomplish this goal rather than if I don't. And then you're determined to work to make that happen. and you're going to do everything in your power to set up success. You're going to be accountable to somebody. You're going to be accountable to yourself. It's not just a fly-by-night thing. Oh, it'd sure be nice to have a new car next year.
So it takes more effort to set a goal.
It takes desire, determination, and discipline, as we talk about in our book, Winning Your Financial Game.
I think there has to be some education with it, some knowledge, because sometimes people have unrealistic goals. So that could be a problem too.
Oh, yeah.
People set unrealistic goals or resolutions or whatever they are, not really understanding what it takes to get from where they are to where they say they want to be. So
that would be more of a dream then in that case.
yeah, but sometimes we have people that we've talked to that say, I'm not saving any money right now, but in 5 years, I want to have $1 million. And they don't really have any plan, or maybe
what's between here and there.
Right. Or they succumb to some different kinds of marketing or schemes that are out there that say that they're going to give them these fabulous results, but they don't have enough understanding to know how to implement or to even recognize if a plan is implementable. Is that a word?
Yeah. A lot of people are trying to look for a shortcut to get to what they would make a resolution about, that they would dream that they could do, but they're not willing to set the goal and work for that. And so they become very vulnerable to scams and con artists that are saying, oh, here's a shortcut. We can get there. We can get that, what you'd really dreamed about, without having to work as hard, or without having to put in the effort, or without having to be accountable, or without, you name it.
And there's not always immediate penalties for cheating on a goal, whether it's a go-up goal or a give-up goal. But think about it. For a lot of people, if they set a goal to lose weight, and then they go through the drive-through next week, they're not going to immediately gain 50 pounds. So there's not an immediate penalty for hitting the drive-through. And so in that type of situation, it's easy to edge out the goal and give up on it eventually, instead of really putting in the discipline to make that happen.
Lance Armstrong's name just popped into my head because he had a goal to win, and he did very, very successfully for years. But then it was found out he cheated. He was doping his blood, and he had a way of taking all this effort and time to cheat. And it looked like he won, but then when he found out he was a cheater, his reputation went just in the gutter. And this is what happens with so many people that want to get ahead financially, and they're not willing to put in the time to become educated, to become knowledgeable, or they're not wanting to put in the work or the effort to make it. They just want to get there.
So a lot of human problems that we're talking about here. Lack of discipline, lack of understanding. There are some technical problems then that we could talk about too with goal setting. What about somebody who sets a goal to spend less?
Well,
that might be a good goal, right? They need to spend less to keep more of the money they're making. Okay, they're not going to spend as much this year. Why wouldn't that be a good goal?
Because I can spend 1 penny less than I did last year and meet that goal, John.
Okay.
Yeah, we need
So it's not very specific.
Right, we need it more specific.
A goal has to be something that's really kind of big and outside your normal box. Otherwise, it's not a goal.
We do need specifics. We need something that is outside what you're doing now so that it's really a goal, something to reach for. And yet it's got to be something attainable.
It does. So many people say, well, I'm going to talk to 20 clients this week. And every week I'm going to talk to, well, now that might be a great goal, but how are you going to achieve it?
Yeah. So then breaking that goal down.
What's the next step that you have to take to get there?
That's
can you do it overnight, or is it going to take some time to build up to that level? It's a good question.
And that's what I love about the 10-20-70 rule. When we talk to people about their finances and they, they're not saving and they know they need to, how much should they be saving? And, when we come down to the 10-20-70 rule, 10% of everything you make is yours to keep.
Yeah.
And starting there, so it doesn't matter if you have a low income or a high income, starting with that 10%, that can be a good goal. And then figuring out, okay, if I'm going to save this 10%, that may mean that I can't buy this because I'm saving this money.
So you're talking about rules the 10-20-70 rule. It's a great rule, but that brings up universal laws. There's some things that you can have a goal that you're going to fly without the aid of an airplane, and that's unrealistic.
Yeah,
So
well, there's
our
certain
goals
laws
have to be
we have
within
to be
the
limited.
laws of nature, and that's where education comes in.
Yeah.
Is that we have to know what is possible and what isn't possible. And creativity is really important once we get educated, because now we can stretch those laws and we can use different laws to overcome certain laws that we thought were unsurmountable.
So an example of that, a goal that's not specific enough, you recently took a trip and flew from Indianapolis to Las Vegas. Your airplane was flying west a lot of that time. But if you just gotten on any airplane that's goal was to fly west, you could end up in San Diego or Tokyo. And there's not a lot of specificity there. That's where it pays to get a little bit more specific. Otherwise, you don't really know what you're working to achieve.
And the pilot didn't just get up and say, I'm going to head west because I know Las Vegas is out there. No, otherwise he would have got out there and said, oh, I'm headed for San Francisco instead. And then what does he do? Turn around and come back and land the plane and start over again?
No.
And that's what happens with a lot of resolutions. Every year, people are making the same resolution, or they come back to the same financial resolution they had before because they never set a goal.
It starts snowballing on them after a while, and they start feeling bad. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that people don't set goals to begin with, is because if they write it down and put something specific to paper and then they fail, now they've been wrong at the top of their voice.
Yeah.
They actually put it in writing and they weren't able to achieve it. But is it better to put something in writing and fail to achieve it? Or is it better to put nothing in writing and never achieve anything?
Well, Michelle, we see a lot of resolutions, people coming to us and say, well, I'm going to pay off my debt before I work with you guys. Or I'm going to do this before I start this. And why is that not necessarily the best plan? Why is that not necessarily the best goal?
Because you could reach your goal of getting everything paid off, but then you have nothing. You start at zero. Where if you can do some of both, be saving and paying your debt off, that when the debt is paid off, you don't start at ground zero, because you started at ground zero back then, when you made that goal. And so you're able to do more than one thing at a time. It's just like if you have children, you have one child and then you have a second child. Well, you don't neglect the first child to pour everything into the second child. You nurture both because both are growing. They're at different points. And sometimes you have to spend a little bit more time and attention towards one child, but you nurture both of them so that you progress together. And same thing with debt that you've got to pay off. That's a great goal, but you also need to save and preserve for yourself in the future.
So goals can have parallel paths as you're getting to them. You can accomplish more than one thing when you're reaching a goal. And oftentimes it takes multiple resolutions along the way to reach that goal. Just like you can pay off your debt and keep more of the money you're making at the same time. You don't have to do either or. And that comes just because you become elucidated that, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And if we find out the multiple ways to skin a cat, we often can accomplish a whole lot more, reaching the same goal, getting out of debt. But we can reach that goal and be wealthy when we get out of debt, or we can just reach there and have nothing, like you said, Michelle. If you want to spend less, save more, and have financial peace of mind, don't make these things your resolution, because statistically speaking, you're going to fail.
You can make specific goals to accomplish all of these things in the new year. We'll talk about how you do that right after the break.
Did you ever play with a set of these rings growing up? They make a great visual picture of how you should set up your finances. On top, you have the higher risk investments, the lower risk investments. This ring is debt, this ring is savings, and this ring is protection. This stand represents the economy. If there's one thing we know about the economy, is that it will change, and it does, and this can change. It's unstable. What some people do when they set up their finances, they take and they go for the shiny, high risk, potentially higher yield investment. Now, potential return does not mean probable, and it is definitely not probable. So this doesn't perform as well as they hope, and they think they should add a more conservative investment that actually might return something. So they add that, and believe it or not, some people will go into debt for that. Add that to the debt they already have, and there's their debt ring right on top of that. If you are listening to this podcast, I hope that you have time to click the link in the description for the YouTube video, and we'll tell you where in that video you can see this demonstration, because it really comes alive when you see it. Well, you have these three negatives, these investments that aren't returning as well as you had hoped, and your debt, which is just a draw on your finances, and people think, oh, I should probably save something. So they add savings to that. Then they look at what they have going there. It looks a little precarious, so they plop some protection right on top of that. Well, if there's one thing we know about the economy, is that it will change. It is uncertain and unstable, and as soon as it changes, you lose your protection and your savings, which are the two things you want to keep most. That's the importance of doing it right. Start with protection. That makes a nice foundation for everything else you do financially. Once you have protection in, then add your savings program so you can keep more of the money you make. Next, make sure your debt is handled. Pay off the bad debts, keep the good debts. A good debt is one that gives you a tax advantage or limits your opportunity costs and allows you to make money. Once that's handled, you can do an investment. Hopefully this is something you know about, because those type of investments that you know something about tend to return better. And if you have extra cash flow and want to go for one of those potential high risk, high reward investments, then you can do that too. Now, when the economy changes, you're much more secure. At McFie-Insurance, we specialize in helping people set up this layer, the protection layer, the foundation for what they do financially. We specialize in designing and selling whole life insurance that becomes this protection layer for you. It's a good foundation for everything else you do financially. If you need life insurance, or if you need to get a life insurance policy you already own reviewed, we can help you with both of those things. Contact us by phone at 702-660-7000, or you can email us, team@mcfieinsurance.com.
Spending less, saving more, having financial peace of mind are all great outcomes, but none of those things make good financial goals.
They're too general. You can have a goal to spend less, and if you spent $72,000 last year, you can spend $71,999 this year, and technically you still achieved your goal, but you failed to accomplish your purpose.
Yes, absolutely.
So we need to have a goal of a very specific nature. That's what makes a goal, is very specific and very committed to reaching that goal. I think of the old axiom, soon is not a time, and some is not a number. So when we're setting a goal, we need to be very specific about it. And we need to put a time factor on it, that we're going to achieve this next week, next month, 5 years from now. And in doing that, we need to be very aware of Parkinson's law that says whatever time limit we give is going to take 100% of that.
You mentioned right before the break that one way that we could set a goal to spend less was to use the 10-20-70 rule. Why is that a better way to set a goal to spend, to set a goal to save and keep more of the money that you're making rather than saying spend less? Why is that? How is that more positive and specific?
Oh, yeah, exactly. That was the key word, John, positive. We have to look at things and frame them in a positive manner. Just the other day, we had some cabinets delivered for our laundry room, and a couple of our family members were out there when those cabinets were being delivered, loaded off of the truck into the garage. And there were two fellows. One was doing most of the heavy lifting. The other was taking on the supervisor role and the role of a critic, because every time the other guy would go to pick something up. Now, don't drop that. Don't break that. Don't do this. Don't do that. You're going to do very negative.
Yeah.
What he should have been saying is, oh, this one is heavy. Let's move it carefully. That was a great job. Those kind of things. So we have to frame whatever we're facing in a positive light. Instead of saying, oh, this house looks terrible, we need to do cleaning. Wow, let's straighten up this place and really make it look good. So focusing on the positive. So not just saying, oh, I'm going to spend less. I'm going to be saving more. And here's my plan for doing that. And if you are going to be saving more of the money you make, obviously you have to be spending less unless you're cheating and going on credit cards.
This makes me think of the old farmer we lived by when we lived in Virginia. He said his father taught him, if you can't make a dime today, you save one. And so a lot of ways to spend less is to look at all the things that your budget is being spent on, that your income is being spent on, and find out what is really necessary. I mean, one of the things that we've done in our family is we've really evaluated the cost of eating out. Now, I love to eat out, and I love to take you out, Michelle,
be
the
fun.
family out. It's a lot of fun. But I know statistically that it is not as healthy to eat out as it is to eat in if you're preparing healthy foods. It's just impossible to get the nutritional value out of a meal that's being eaten out as it is in. So when we choose to make most of our meals at home, we're spending less both on healthcare costs and on food, because a meal out is $9 on average higher than a meal eaten in per person.
Wow. That can add up pretty quickly.
And there again, that positive frame. We don't feel like it's a drudgery to eat at home because, I've purchased good tools in the kitchen to enjoy cooking and to make it easier. And then we have a nice table where everyone can sit around. We set the table with good silverware and, things we've invested in over the time to make it very pleasurable, and everyone enjoys that. And just recently we went out to dinner as a family, and a little less than a wonderful experience, not as nice as some of our other experiences, but even so, it's very hard to visit around the table.
It is.
And that is one
Tends
of
to
the
be loud.
yeah, that's one of the key things about taking a meal together is to enjoy that human connection, the talk that we have, that spiritual time that we have together. And that was very lacking. And so just kind of looking at your overall goals and seeing how they can fit together and then framing them in a positive light.
That's so important, seeing how they can fit together. Because I can set a goal to save 10%. I can do that, even if my expenses are eating up 100% of my income now. But what if I don't adjust the expenses? Is that going to really help? Do I still need a goal to spend less in some way in order to accomplish my goal of saving 10%?
Yes, unless you're going to suddenly make more money.
Yeah.
Increasing your income.
So
might
how
be
does the
an
10-20-70 help us to evaluate existing expenses, things that we need to get rid of so that we can move in that positive direction?
Well, I think by listing out what you're spending right now, whether it's for your lifestyle, like paying taxes, your mortgage, your car payment, your clothes, your utility bills, your vacations, all those things, those are lifestyle things, versus what are you paying on non-performing debt like credit card debt or loans that you have from a family member or lines of credit from the bank. Those type of things, they're non-performing because they were just usually used to buy consumables. Okay. So they're not giving you anything back. And then listing what it is that you're keeping every time you get a paycheck. How much is that? Looking at that gives you a high view of what you're doing right now so that you can go and make specifics. They'll say, oh, do we really need to be spending $1,700 a month on eating out? Couldn't we move that down here to the grocery bill and maybe pay, $1,200 a month and have better meals and wholesome? Then we wouldn't be spending so much on health care. And by the way, we would probably have better communication in the family too.
So you've got to go through specifically, take things off to make room for the other goals. And that's so important because your goals, they have to work together in the overall picture in order to be reasonable. There was this one lady that turned 75 and she declared to her family that she had set a goal. She was going to walk 5 miles a day, every day for the rest of her life. Her family tried to dissuade her. That may not be reasonable at your age. And so then it's been 5 years. The lady is now 80 years old, but her family doesn't know where she is.
Oh dear.
So this kind of reminds me in a way too of our some clients that we worked with who had over $90,000 of debt. A lot of it was credit card debt. We put together the numbers, looked at their 10, 20, 70 principles, helped them walk through that process, showed them they had pretty good cash flow. They were able to get that debt paid off in about 11 months. Well, that was exciting. And then they took a trip to Hawaii on the credit card to celebrate. They did come back and follow through later. So that's that was the good news side of the plan.
And there's nothing wrong with celebrating. If you're moving towards your goal and you're getting there, that should be part of your little resolutions along the way, is that we get to this point in this goal and we're going to go out and celebrate a little bit, because otherwise life gets pretty boring just shooting toward goals, and you become very analytical and maybe not really fun to be around.
Yeah. And then there's the other side of it, the people that see a plan to get out of debt in a few years and they go to Hawaii on the credit cards and it makes the situation worse, and it doesn't necessarily have
That's
to.
correct.
So there's a balance between those things.
So, Michelle,
yes.
I want to talk to you a little bit and have you share your ideas about, well, how would you feel if I just set down this rigid budget line because I want to have, $2 million saved by next year, and I didn't allow you any liberty at all to change that at all? Does that work really well in a marriage?
Absolutely not. Because we are supposed to be a team. And so if we have goals that we want to meet together, I mean, you think of a football team, the quarterback could have one goal, but if the team doesn't share that goal, it's going to be hard for him to accomplish his goal. So it's a team working together. A married couple is a team working together. And so you have to come together. You have to identify the goals that you're willing to work on together and set those goals. Now, one person might feel stronger about the goal, and that's part of dying to yourself in a marriage and choosing to put someone else's driving goal ahead of some of your own thoughts. But you need to work together towards that. But then you also have other marriages where one is a wild spender. And that's not appropriate either. So you have to come together to have those financial goals, allow spending for interests of both people
Absolutely.
in there, and then join together on the financial goal and be committed to it, both of you.
Being a 49er fan, it's really fun to watch them this year because they've got a team that really doesn't care who gets the credit for the goals, for the stats. They're willing to sacrifice for other players to make the goals. And that's what really successful goals are all about, is working together as a team, not caring who gets the glory in this thing, but the fact that we're going to win, we're going to reach that goal, and we're going to score. And
That's cool.
That's a beauty to watch a team do that, and it's fun to be part of a team with you, Michelle, to make that happen too.
So there's a couple tips that I think would be helpful for everyone as they're setting goals for the new year. And that is, as you're setting these goals, to think about the rewards that you can set. Give yourself a little emotional carrot out there to work toward. Not something that'll break the bank if it's a financial goal, but something that gives you some emotional pleasure as you work toward that goal. The other thing is to take big goals. There may be long-term goals. Break those down into milestones so that you can think short and mid-range on those longer goals and see yourself making progress toward them over time. Because a long goal can be easy to put off, but if it has short milestones, it tends to be attended to a little bit more. The other thing, you can even add fines for cheating. If it's a give-up goal, and you can add a fine for cheating if you want to, but be sure to differentiate between lack of results for something that's outside your control versus an action that you took or didn't take that put you further away from achieving that goal.
So if you're not a Lance Armstrong, and you fail, then it's okay. You can correct that and you can go forward. But if you've pre-planned to cheat to try to win,
Not going to work.
it's not going to work.
Yeah. You have to be honest with yourself as you're going through the accountability on that.
And the real bottom line there is, how well can a cheater feel about achieving their goal if they know they didn't get there honestly?
Yeah, you can't.
You have an advantage in setting financial goals. If you follow the process, your financial goals will not be fruitless resolutions.
As this year rolls along, you're going to be faced with many financial decisions. If you make good financial decisions, your success will come much faster.
Financial decisions paralyze some people, but when you know how to think about finances, those decisions become simple. We'll talk about how to make financial decisions simple next week, right here on Wealth Talk.